You know what's predictable about American history, Sam? The most effective president of the 1920s was a guy who basically got the job by accident and whose main strategy was keeping his mouth shut.
That's such an interesting way to look at Calvin Coolidge, Pappy. They called him Silent Cal for a reason. There's that famous story where someone bet they could get him to say more than two words, and he just replied, "You lose."
And what's fascinating is how he turned that reserved personality into his greatest political asset. After the Harding administration's scandals, especially that whole Teapot Dome affair, the country was desperate for someone honest and straightforward.
So, in a way, his boring personality was exactly what America needed at that moment.
Exactly right. And here's what's really interesting. During his presidency, the economy was absolutely booming. The stock market was soaring, wages were rising, and new technologies were transforming daily life. His famous quote was, "The chief business of the American people is business." And he really lived by that.
Though I've heard there's more to that prosperity story than meets the eye.
Oh, definitely. While urban areas were thriving, farmers were facing a serious crisis. Crop prices had collapsed, and when Congress tried to help, Coolidge vetoed the bills. He believed so strongly in limited government that he wouldn't intervene, even when entire sectors of the economy were struggling.
That philosophy of limited government really defined his presidency, didn't it?
It did, and it showed up in surprising ways. Like with civil rights, he made some remarkably progressive statements for a 1920s Republican, saying, "The rights of Negroes are just as sacred as those of any other citizen." But when it came to actually using federal power to protect those rights, he held back.
Hmm. Sounds like there was often a gap between his words and actions.
Well, that's what makes studying Coolidge so fascinating. He was dealing with massive social changes, prohibition, immigration debates, the rise of jazz culture and flappers, but his response was always to do less rather than more. He had this quote: "I have never been hurt by what I have not said."
That approach seems almost impossible to imagine in today's political environment.
Right? He would work from home, take afternoon naps, and go to bed early. But here's what's really interesting: his Treasury Secretary, Andrew Mellon, pushed through major tax cuts that they believed would stimulate the economy. And for a while, it seemed to work brilliantly.
Until it didn't. The Great Depression was just around the corner.
Though that's where historical analysis gets tricky. The causes of the Depression were complex and international, but some historians argue that Coolidge's hands off approach allowed dangerous speculation to build up in the financial markets. His philosophy of "don't interfere" might have had serious unintended consequences.
So, what do you think is Coolidge's most relevant lesson for today?
I think it's that sometimes effective leadership isn't about making the most noise. Coolidge showed that character and restraint can be powerful political assets, but he also showed the limitations of a purely hands off approach to government. When he said, "Don't expect to build up the weak by pulling down the strong," he was expressing a philosophy that still shapes political debates today.
That's really interesting. So, his presidency was kind of a test case for small government conservatism.
Exactly, Sam. And while the Roaring Twenties seemed to validate his approach, the aftermath raised serious questions. It's a reminder that sometimes what works in the short term might have hidden long term costs. But you know what's really striking? In an era of political chaos and corruption, Coolidge restored faith in the presidency simply by being honest and consistent.
So maybe his real legacy was showing that character matters more than charisma, Pappy?
That's right, Sam. And in today's political environment, where everyone seems to be shouting to get attention, maybe there's something to learn from Silent Cal's approach, sometimes saying less, but meaning what you say can be the most powerful statement of all.